Okay, so how much income do you actually need to make to buy a $500,000 house? This is the core anxiety every single first-time buyer feels, right? You see a listing for a $500,000 home, it looks absolutely perfect, but that little voice in your head asks, wait, how much do I actually need to earn to safely afford this without, going broke?
It's okay to be house poor. Eating is overrated.
Today, we're decoding this complex financial system. We're going to look at 3 distinct objective frameworks to answer this exact question and completely remove the guesswork from your home buying journey.
You have my attention.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the $500,000 house. Second, the ultra-conservative math. Third, the classic 28% rule. Fourth, the absolute lender maximum. And finally, finding your state's number. All right, section 1, the $500,000 house, setting our baseline assumptions. Before we even look at the income you need, we've got to lock in the variables of the mortgage itself. This makes it incredibly easy to isolate and really understand that income variable we're searching for. So let's dive into our baseline. We're looking at a purchase price of $500,000. To keep the math clean, we're assuming you've saved up a full 20% down payment, which is $100,000. That is a massive win, by the way, because it means you safely avoid extra monthly costs like private mortgage insurance or PMI.
Mortgage insurance.
We're using a conventional loan with rates at 6.69% for a 30-year mortgage and 6.01% for a 15-year. And super importantly, our housing cost calculations include principal, interest, plus your specific state's estimated property taxes and homeowners insurance. Moving on to section 2, the ultra-conservative math, also known as the Dave Ramsey rule. We're starting at the most highly conservative end of the financial spectrum. The crucial point here is how this rule is structured. It demands a shorter 15-year loan. That means your monthly payments are naturally going to be higher because, well, you're paying the house off twice as fast. Plus, the payment cannot exceed 25% of your net pay. That word net is everything. It means what actually hits your bank account after federal tax, FICA, state income tax, and your pre-tax retirement contributions. It is literally the most restrictive way to measure your buying power. It's wild to see how strict this 15-year rule is when we run the actual numbers. Because it uses your net income and a 15-year term, you would need massive gross salaries to make this work. I mean, in a state with lower taxes like Nevada, you need a gross salary of nearly $268,000 just to afford this $500,000 house. In Idaho, it jumps to over $291,000. And in a state like Nebraska, you need to earn over $360,000 a year. For most first-time homebuyers, this framework can feel pretty much entirely out of reach.
Who farted in my sandwich?
Okay, section 3, the classic 28% rule, which is the standard benchmark. Let's step away from the extremes for a second and look at the middle ground framework. This is widely considered by financial planners as the really realistic standard for housing affordability. This rule completely changes the math in 2 big ways. First, it shifts the timeline to a standard 30-year loan, which instantly lowers your monthly obligation. Second, it calculates that 28% threshold against your gross salary. Gross just means your before-tax income. It's the number you were offered in your employment letter before the government or your 401k takes their cut. Think about how dramatically the required salary drops here. By stretching the loan out to 30 years and using gross income, a $500,000 home becomes significantly more accessible. In Hawaii, you'd need an annual gross income of around $121,000. In Virginia, it's about $136,000. Even in higher property tax states like Texas and Nebraska, you're looking at the $160,000 to $163,000 range. This framework gives you some much-needed breathing room while keeping your homeownership dreams securely grounded in reality. Next up, section 4, the absolute lender maximum, where we're pushing the limits.
We don't need no stinking budgets.
Now we're going to flip to the exact opposite end of the spectrum and explore what a bank might actually approve you for. This defines the absolute maximum limit. Under this framework, lenders are willing to let a staggering 49% of your gross before tax income go straight to your housing payment on a 30-year loan. Now, the major caveat here is that this assumes you have absolutely zero other debts. No car payments, no student loans, no credit card balances whatsoever. Under this highly aggressive rule, the barrier to entry absolutely plummets. You could potentially be approved for that $500,000 house with a gross income of just $69,000 in Hawaii or around $78,000 in Colorado. In Illinois or Texas, you're looking at the low 90,000s. Listen closely. Just because a bank says you can borrow this much absolutely doesn't mean you should. Committing nearly half of your before-tax income to a mortgage leaves you very, very little breathing room in your monthly budget for life's inevitable surprises.
Like that! Run away! Run away!
Finally, Section 5, finding your state's number, comparing the frameworks. When we put these rules side by side, it perfectly illustrates the stark contrast in what the word affordable actually means depending on who you ask. It's crazy to think about the gap for a single state like Illinois across all three frameworks. For the exact same $500,000 house, a lender says you only need to make around $90,000. But if you want to follow the ultra-conservative Ramsey budget, you need to make nearly $354,000. That is over a $260,000 gap between what a bank will legally approve and what a conservative financial plan demands. And right there in the middle sits the classic 28% rule at about $158,000. Geography also plays a huge role in your purchasing power. A state with generally lower estimated property taxes, like Wyoming, requires less income across every single framework. But if you buy that exact same priced house in a state with higher estimated taxes, like New Jersey, your required income gets pushed up significantly across the board. It's just a fantastic reminder that the sticker price of the house, that's really only part of your monthly math. Remember, as you plan for this amazing milestone, there really is no single right answer here. We aren't here to tell you what to do. Our whole goal with this explainer is simply to give you the toolkit to decode the system. You have the numbers, you understand the formulas, and now you have the power to make an empowered, educated choice that actually aligns with your life. So here's my challenge to you. Take a really hard look at these three frameworks alongside your own monthly budget. Ask yourself honestly, where do you feel most secure on this spectrum before you ever make that first call to a bank? Because ultimately, who should decide what you can afford? A banking algorithm designed to maximize your debt, or you designing a life of financial freedom? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and happy house hunting.
We're